Testing. Hello, YouTube. It's Justin, aka Demonic Sweaters, and well, actually, this was going to be, originally I planned on this being a, edited, put together video, but then, I was at Costco for most of the day, and I was like, well, I could just live stream this idea, which might be better anyways. So, in order to get started, though, I need to open up something here. Can I open up a PDF? I might have to do a window capture. Let's see, hold on. And what today's stream is going to be is last night I was actually talking to my friend Ian BW on Instagram and talking about drums, and I kept showing him pictures of all these old drum sets I have, and I'm sure it was getting annoying, to the point because, I've had so many, and I just kept basically blasting him with images of drum sets, and I was like, I should make a video about this because I have had an insane amount of drum sets, and I actually started to write them all down today, or at least I did write down all the ones I could remember, and what it ended up being, the number I came up with was 27 different drum sets. So let me open up the list here. Let's see, how can I do this? Window capture. And okay, yeah, here we go. All right, so let's shrink this down a little bit. So here is the list. And let me see if I increase the text size any. Ah! Okay. Why is it like that? I don't want it to be like that. Okay, there we go. So, let me just put this off to the side, and we'll get started going over this list. And starting with my very first drum set that I've ever had, which was basically a made in Japan, at least I think, made in Japan, Ludwig looking set. It looked like an old Ludwig or an old Slingerland or something like that. But I'm pretty sure it wasn't a real deal. I'm pretty sure it was more like a knockoff type drum set. Hey, Jake, how's it going? So the very first drum kit. Okay, well, first, I'll just give an overview of the list first. Then we'll get into the details. So the list is broken down by year. And all the different sets that I've had throughout the years. And then the ones with the asterisks on them are ones that I consider to be kind of important drum sets for one reason or another. That I either played a lot live, or why can't I hear my mic? Can you guys hear me? Test, test, test. Oh, there we go. My headphone volume was all the way down. So the ones with the asterisks, you're hearing clicking. Really? Huh. Wonder why that is. I don't hear that on my end. All right, let me stop the stream and then I'll start it again, and we'll see if that fixes it. Okay, I just stopped it and started it again. Is it still beeping? I wonder what that could be. You still hearing it, Jake? Because it sounds totally clear here on my end. Huh. Well, that's annoying. What could that be? Okay, maybe it's this intro video coming through or something. Let's see, did that fix it? If I muted that? Or if I mute desktop audio? Is that any better? Okay. I'm going to disconnect for a second and restart OBS and see if that fixes it. So I'll be right back. Okay, how's that? Is that any better? Yeah, I hear it. If I listen to the video audio through the player in YouTube, I can hear it. It's like a cricket chirping or something. I wonder why that's happening. Do I have anything connected here? Oh, wait. I bet I know what it is. There we go. I fixed it. It was a cable plugged into my interface that wasn't plugged into anything. Okay, so thanks for helping me take care of that, Jake. So let's go over the overview. This video, it might end up being 2 parts because, as you can see, it's 27 drum sets long. So, but what I was saying is the ones on the list with the asterisks are kind of like the ones that were important to me for one way or another. So the very first one on the list, 1986. That was the very first drum set. I left one out. I've already realized a mistake, but I'm going to skip over the Muppets drum set. Okay, the Muppets drum set was probably in 1982 or somewhere around there. So I'm going to skip over that. And I was just a really, really little kid at that point. But the first real drum set I ever got was in 1986, and it was a red and blue sparkle something, made in Japan type drum set. It's possible, for some reason I remember possibly the bass drum might have been a real Ludwig, and I remember the bass drum was actually quite shallow. It was almost like it was like a pancake bass drum, like almost like a marching size bass drum, but it was a bass drum that had, bass drum legs on it, but maybe somebody modified it or something like that. And Jake, you were born in 1986. Wow. Yeah. Well, I mean, you're not as old as me, but you're not young either. So I don't feel that bad. So like I was saying, I had this short kind of pancake type bass drum on it. And I believe the bass drum was blue sparkle, and I believe the toms were all red sparkle. So it was non-matching, and it had a Premier snare drum. I remember that. Now, I don't have a photo of this drum set, unfortunately, but I found one similar online, so I'm going to show you guys that. This is pretty much, except for the bass drum was thinner on mine, and imagine the toms were red. But this is like the era of drum set that I had for my first drum set. It was like a 1960s Japanese sparkly drum set. And I'm not 100% sure if the bass drum was a real Ludwig or not, but for some reason I remember it being a real Ludwig, but maybe it just had a Ludwig head on it, which is quite, I was a kid, so I could have thought it was a real Ludwig at that point, if it just had a head on it. So that one obviously is marked as important with an asterisk because it was the drum set that I learned to play drums on. And I also remember that it had a really old Zildjian ride cymbal, like really old, that came with it. And the hi-hats, I believe, were Camber 2s. And I think that's all I had as far as cymbals, was a ride and some hi-hats. I don't think I had a crash. And none of the drums had bottom heads. I remember that all the bottom heads were gone. What was I going to say? The bass drum, like I said, it was thin. It had no front head on it, but that's not what I was going to talk about. What was I talking about right before that? Anyway, I'll tell you guys where I got it. And I did say this story pretty recently on the live streams before, but this came from a place called Strings and Things, which was in West Milford, West Virginia. And my dad found this place there through somebody he worked with in the coal mines, told him about it. And it was literally a barn, like a shed. It was more like a shed on the side of this guy's house. Oh, the old Zildjian. Thanks, Jake. I'll get back to that. So it was on the side of this guy's house. It was a shed, and he had a bunch of old music stuff in there, and he had really good prices. And he sold us that drum kit for really cheap and threw in the cymbals, I think, for free, and gave me like a cowboy boot filled with drumsticks And that was how I got started playing drums. That was the very first drum set that I ever had. And I think I played my first show with that drum set as well. Possibly. But I'm not 100% sure about that. But I did play it a lot. I played it for several years. Or not several, let's see. About 2 years, it looks like there. But when you're a kid, 2 years goes by really fast. I was 10 or really long. Sorry, the opposite of what I would say. I was 10 years old at that time, and so I was just learning to play. And I was taking lessons at this little music store in downtown Morgantown, West Virginia called Obie Follies. And my drum teacher was named Mike Schoonover. And I have no idea what happened to Mike. I think he's dead. I've heard that, I think, from somebody. But, it was a long time ago. But he wasn't like super old when he was my teacher, but I don't think he was in the greatest of health and things like that. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he's still alive. If he is, I hope so. Hi, Mike, if you somehow you see this. But I have no idea what happened to him. And I took lessons from him for about a year. And I don't know if he was just not a great instructor or I just progressed really quickly. But after about a year, he was like, well, I can't really show you anything anymore. We're going to end the lessons. So that was it. I just had like a year of lessons. And then basically he told me not to come back. And it's not like I was like a bad student or anything. I was actually really into it. And I thought he was a good teacher, at the time. But I just don't think maybe he just couldn't show me much else. I don't think he was like a really, really great drummer. I mean, I don't know. Maybe he was, or maybe my dad didn't want to pay anymore and just told him to say that. That's another possibility. I didn't think about that. So I don't know, but I don't know if my dad would do that. It doesn't seem like something to do. But anyway, the old Zildjian that it came with was a really, really old, probably 50s. It's hard to say again because I was so young, but I do know it was a Zildjian, and I remember it had this, at the time I didn't like it because it had this really, really dark, low pitch to it, and in the 80s, that really wasn't popular. The 80s were all ride cymbals were really pingy and bright, and the most popular cymbals were all bright sounding, and this thing sounded, to me, it sounded like a trash can lid. But looking back on it, that thing was probably like an old Zildjian K or something like that. It had that kind of sound. But there's no way to really know. And what happened to that drum set, like I had mentioned in the other stream, was my sister had taken it somewhere to jam with these guys, and they basically stole it. Hey, Pyramid 7. How's it going? They claim they don't know what happened to it, but it pretty much disappeared from their basement at that time. So I never saw it again after that. So, Asef, hey, how's it going, man? After that, my father bought me a really weird... Oh, I didn't find a picture of this. I need to find one. A really weird drum set called a Purecussion rim set. And let me just Google that real quick. These things were basically a drum set that had no shells. And let's see, I found an image already. And what's interesting about these is they were the first, I'm sure you guys have all seen those rims mounting hardware things that mount toms to drums, or like a suspension system. These things were basically how those became a thing. This company, Purecussion, had licensed that design from Gauger, and they started selling these drum sets, which ultimately were a total flop. But I was one of the few people that actually bought, or my dad was one of the few people that actually bought one of these things. And let me just open up this image and show you guys. Where is it? Downloads. I have too many things in my downloads folder. Ah, damn it. Where did I put that thing? Okay, hold on. Ah, where'd it go? Ah, okay, let me try this again. Save it to the desktop. That'll make it easier. Oh, I found, this one's even better. I found an image that's literally exactly like the one I had, so that's better. Desktop, where are you? Okay, here it is. So let's get back to the other screen here. Okay, so after my first drum set, this was the second drum set I had. And as you can see, this thing is really weird. It is weird. It's like basically, I mean, but it was a cool idea. Like today, this would probably be a lot more successful than it was in the 1980s because everybody wants compact drums these days. And these were acoustic drums. They weren't electronic drums. They were acoustic drums. And the way they were actually somewhat loud. I mean, they were almost as loud as a full set. I would say maybe like a little bit quieter, but they weren't like super quiet or anything. And the whole thing folded up and fit in that case that is right next to it right there. So you had basically all of your drums and snare drum and everything and hardware all fit together in one case. And so that was my second drum set. Oh, and I forgot to mention too, the first drum set I played in a band with my friends who I'll talk about a lot in this video because we played together for a long time. Basically, my friends Jay and John, who both lived in the same neighborhood as me, I played that first drum set and this drum set with those two guys. That band later became the band Lincoln. At that point, our very first name, well, when we first started, it was actually me and Jay and another kid named Josh, but Josh moved away. But when it was Josh, we were called Toxic Ox-Snot. Like Toxic OX Snot. And that was our first band, but that only lasted for like a couple months. And then after Josh moved away and we got John, then we changed our name to Public Distraction. And that, unfortunately, I used to have some cassette tapes of Public Distraction rehearsing way back in 1986, like boombox cassettes. And they might still be at my dad's somewhere, but I have not been able to locate them. I remember finding them like probably about 10 or 15 years ago. And was like, oh, I need to remember where these are so I can dub them, you know, and then I forgot, and then years went by, and I never found them again. But they could still be there. So anyway, this drum set, let's see, what was my timeline on the Purecussion? Purecussion set was 1988 to around these years are estimates too, to around 1989, somewhere around there. And I was playing that, like I said, in Public Distraction. But then also, I had joined another band called Livestock Release. And I was playing those drums in Livestock Release. And the thing is, too, with Livestock Release, is our bass player happened to have another one of those Purecussion drum sets. And so in Livestock Release, I would set two of them up, like, together. And so I'd have this giant, like, double bass drum set made of these hilarious like Purecussion drums. And I remember we played a gig. I definitely played gigs with those things. Like we played a gig at there was a place called the Dry House, which was all ages shows happened. And I had that ridiculous double bass drum set. And I was probably like, I don't know what, like 12 or something like that, 12 or 13 years old. And I remember like I got a lot of attention for that because like, you know, here's this little kid playing this huge drum set that looked crazy, like it didn't look like any drums anybody had ever seen. And this is just this small town in West Virginia. And at that point, I wasn't like a really good drummer, but I could play okay. You know, I mean, I could hold a beat, and we were playing pretty fast songs, you know, and like we were punk rock and stuff. And I remember like there were a lot of older musicians there, and they were like, basically, I got all the attention of the band. Like, because I was like, for one, I was the youngest kid, and that was very common for me too. Like when I was in every band I was in up until my 20s, I was always the youngest, because I was usually like the kid drummer, you know, like I think when I was like 12 playing with those guys, they were all in high school at that point. So they were all older than me, like 15, 16, 17 years old. And I was just this little kid. And but yeah, it was cool. So let's move on past the Purecussion rim setter. Otherwise, this video is going to be like 5 hours long. So maybe the Purecussion rim set should have had an asterisk because, you I did play that, and I think it could have been my first gigging set, but the Made in Japan one also could have been. There might have been a show. Well, let's see. My very first show actually was at this place called the Mac, which was in Morgantown, West Virginia. It was like a performance art center. And I think I was 10 or 11. That was my first show. But it could have been that Japanese drum set, but it also could have been like my friend's drum set that I played. I really can't remember, or maybe they had a drum set there. So I'm not totally sure about that, but I do know 100% that I played the Purecussions live for several shows. And actually, Livestock Release, we played a lot. Actually, that was I was in the other band first, but when I joined Livestock Release, we were a bigger band. We were a 5-piece band. We had 2 guitar players, a bass player, a singer, and a drummer. And the guitar player, John, was also the guitar player who was in Lincoln and who was also in Public Distraction. So he was in that band with me. But then we had another guitar player named Brian, and our singer was named Davin, and then our bass player's name was Donovan. And let me read some of these comments here. Jake K says it's an E-kit with no triggers or module. Yeah, kind of. I mean, the way that they worked is basically like a rims mount, like those rims mount things, those isolation mounts that go on toms, with like a free-floating, pre-tuned head in it. And somehow they make sound. Like they're actually pretty loud. And they kind of sound like rototoms. They kind of have like a cool sound to them. The bass drum sounds terrible, though. That was the only thing that really sounded bad. The rest didn't sound that bad. So, yeah, that was the rim set. Phoenix Nate says that blue drum set kind of looks like R. David R's $40 drum set. It say ROC on the sticker or bass drum legs, any chance? Well, Republic of China is that, I think that's Taiwan, right? ROC? Yeah. I think that's Taiwan. Because China doesn't recognize Taiwan as their own country. And so they have to, if they are doing business through China, then they have to list it like that, I believe. It's really weird politics. But no, back then, like the Chinese drum sets really didn't start happening until like the 90s. Most of them back in the 80s, like 60s through the 80s, were still made in Japan. So very common to see old Japanese 1960s. I mean, that kit was from the 60s, but I got it in the 80s. So a lot of the 1960s inexpensive sets were made in Japan. You can find those a lot still. You can find good deals on those old made in Japan, although they're becoming more expensive now. But they made a lot of really cool kits. They were like, some people call them stencil sets. So you can find them on Reverb and stuff like that. Actually, there's a really nice one on Craigslist right now. And man, I want it so bad, but I just have nowhere to put it. It's $500, which is kind of expensive for a Japanese one, but it is beautiful. Okay, so let's move on. I'm taking forever here. 1989. Okay, so I had the Purecussion set, but it kind of started to fall apart because, as you can tell by looking at this thing, it doesn't look like the most durable drum set in the world. So I remember the bass drum kept like coming off and like flying out when I was like playing. So I was like, I've got to do something else, and went back to strings and things. I didn't go with my dad. I think some of my band members went there, and I ended up picking up this old. It was like this really old Gretsch rack tom, just by itself, and a 20-inch bass drum that I don't think, it was probably also a made in Japan type thing, but it just had like basically the finish was all taken off of it, and it was just wood. Like it just looked like wood. And then I had that bass, or the Gretsch rack tom that looked really cool. And my snare drum and my floor tom, I believe at that time, my sister also had a drum set. She had a Tama Rockstar. So I think when I would play, I would use her Tama snare drum and floor tom with those two other parts that I had with like my cymbals that I had at that time, which were mostly older, like band type Zildjian cymbals, because me and my friends were kind of we were not the best kids in the world. We used to steal a lot of stuff, and so like we would steal things from like band rooms at like the schools we were all at and stuff like that. So a lot of the cymbals I had were like marching band cymbals that I would just put on stands. I know like my ride cymbal was definitely that. I had to like rip the strap off of it to like put it on my ride stand. And so those were the things I was using then. But anyway, that drum set, the 1989 thing, the pieced together different things, I played that for, about a year, and it's actually on a recording. I recorded that. The very first recording I ever had that was released was the band Ice Fan, and it was, again, Ice Fan was basically, if you go back to the beginning, I was talking about Public Distraction. Ice Fan was Public Distraction. It was the same guys. It was me, Jay, and John. We just had a different name. And we actually released a 7-inch. Well, it was part of a 7-inch compilation on Shredder Records. Shredder Records, if you're not familiar, were like, they were actually kind of a big deal, like at the time. They had Jawbreaker on them. I believe Operation Ivy on them? Anyway, they had some big bands. I think Green Day might have done something with them at one point, and this is before Green Day were ever big. I could be wrong about that. But they were West Coast and had those kind of bands. Many of the bands that they had went on to do much, much bigger things. And we got offered to do the compilation. It was like they used to do these compilations called World in Shreds. That would have like, however many songs they could fit on a single 7-inch record. And so we were on one of those. And that pieced together 1989 drum set I used on that recording, and I was like 14 or something like that, 13 or 14. So yeah, that one was cool for that, and I remember playing a few shows with it. But then back on the stealing things, and I think enough time has gone by where I don't think I'd get in trouble for this anymore. And we did learn our lesson. We got arrested at one point, but I'll get to that story here in a little bit. But after that, I got a Yamaha drum set that me and my friend actually took from the university there. And we were horrible, but we just walked in there in the middle of the day, grabbed it, and just walked out. And like right in front of people. Like nobody said a single thing to us. We just walked outside. We didn't have a car or anything. We just carried it through the parking lot, walked down the field, and then walked about a mile back to Jay's house with this Yamaha drum set in hand. And that was my drum set for a little while, from 1990. I guess it was about a year. It feels like it was longer than that, but again, when you're a kid, I guess that's just how things are. So anyway, I had that set, and then Ice Fan was playing, and then I briefly moved to Florida to my mom's for a little while. Well, actually, no, okay, so I remember now. Here's the timeline of events is coming to me. So shortly after we stole that Yamaha kit, which was actually a pretty nice drum set, we got arrested. All of us who were doing that stuff, and I was 14, and we got caught breaking into a school. I feel so bad now saying this, but anyway, that's what we were doing. We were just kids, and so we got arrested, and we all got in trouble and had to pay like fines, and I had probation, like I was juvenile probation, and had to do community service in the library for a couple years, and so we stopped at that point. And so after that, though, even though we did get caught, they never found out about that particular drum set. So I was able to trade some of the parts I had from that Yamaha to another music store in Ohio for some Premier toms and a Tama snare drum. Now, this drum set is actually quite important because this is when, and let me pull up a photo of this one. Let me find a good one. I've posted some of these on Instagram lately, if you've been following me there. But give me 1 second here. Where is it? My computer has been weird lately. Well, it's not the computer, it's the backup thing. The Google backup thing is being really weird. It's like freezing and just being an all-around jerk. Okay, where's that photo I want to show you guys? Here it is. Okay, so this set, wow, it's huge. This is the Yamaha-Premier Tama mix. And this is the actual set, and that's me when I was like, however old, like 15. So this is still the Yamaha bass drum that we stole, but the toms were I got these toms and I got that snare drum from this Jerry's Music Place in Ohio, and I believe some of those cymbals at that point were still some marching cymbals. Like it looks like all the crashes. They all could have been marching cymbals, actually, right there. That's a good possibility. They all look like logoed Zildjians, so it's pretty possible that that's the case. But I don't know. So anyway, but this thing is really important because Lincoln was a very busy band, and we started to get pretty popular. And, still to this day, people talk about this band. And that drum set was, as you could tell, the toms were freaking huge, and it sounded really cool, actually. Like, it actually sounded really nice, and I played that on several recordings. It's actually on all of the Lincoln recordings. I had another set that I played in Lincoln briefly, on the reunion stuff, but this is the one on all the records, on all the 7 inches, and well, I think the radio show is the other set, but this is the main one that I used. And it was all pieced together, but it looked cool though. It looked legit, and it sounded great. And I remember there was a really great drummer by the name of Darren Zintek who played in some other bands, and I looked up to him. He was older than me, really awesome drummer. And every time he would see me play this drum set, he would always comment on how good it sounded. Because it was just, it was big and bombastic and loud, and we were a loud band. And I remember that bass drum, the Yamaha bass drum, just really cut through, like really, really loud. And it was cool. And the toms were huge. Like, it just looked ridiculous. They're so big. But seeing these photos now makes me want one of those again. I was actually looking at old Premiers on Reverb, and I was like, I'd love to find one of those old. The model of Premier was a APK, is what it was called, and they were not very expensive. Premier, if you're not sure, are an English company, but that era Premier were actually made by Yamaha. So technically, the whole thing was a Yamaha, except for the snare. And back then, Yamahas were still made in Japan too. They weren't made in China yet. I think the high-end Yamahas are still made in Japan. But so yeah, that's the one, and that one's definitely an asterisk because I played that. I went on tour with that kit, and actually it changed a little bit because at one point I spray painted the entire thing primer gray. Let me see. I should have a photo of that. Let's see here. See if I can find it. There's definitely videos of me playing the primer. Well, here's one, but it's really far away. But that's the same kit. You can kind of see it. That's it right there. Let me just zoom in a little bit. So I took off all the hardware, and I spray painted the whole thing primer gray. And the reason why I did that is because I was really, really into Bill Stevenson from The Descendants and All. And that's what he did to his drum set. Like, actually, the whole band, they painted all their gear primer gray. So I basically wanted to be like Bill Stevenson, so I painted my drum set primer gray too, because I was like really, really into him. Now the bell, you'll notice it's way down. It's kind of far away. Let me see if I have a better photo. People always, let me find it here. Fugazi, their drummer always had a big, like, Liberty Bell looking thing next to his drums, and he would play that. And everybody always assumed that, you can't see it in any of these photos, but I had this bell over here to my left. People always assumed that I did that because of Brendan Candy from Fugazi. But the truth is, I actually didn't even really like Fugazi. And I didn't think, I thought he was a pretty good drummer, but I didn't think he was like that great. At that point, I felt like I was kind of better than he was. But they were like, but anyway, the reason why I had the bell is because my dad actually bought it. My dad was always really into boats and ocean type stuff, and he used to have like all this stuff. And he bought this. It was a some kind of nautical bell, and I thought it was really cool the way it sounded. So he didn't, I was like, hey, can I put this on my drum set? And that was the whole reason why I had it. It had nothing to do with Fugazi, but everybody would always think that, when they would see Lincoln play, they thought that I was using that bell because of the guy from Fugazi, but that's not true. It was because of my dad, and I also because of Darren Zintek, who I talked about before. He used an ice bell, which didn't look like that, but it was like a bell cymbal, and I just liked that sound. And so that was another reason why I wanted to have the bell. It didn't have anything to do with Fugazi at all, actually. So, let's see. Are there any comments here? Phoenix Nate, the link, you'll have to send me that later. It blocks links in the chat. So you can send me that on Instagram or something. I'll check it out. All right, let's move to the next one. So after that, this video is going to take forever. This might have to be a two-parter. Hopefully you guys are finding this interesting. I do, because I was amazed when I made this list this morning. I was like, God, I've really had 27 drum sets. That's crazy. So anyway, I'll try to move a little bit faster now, but these all have stories. That's why, I'll try to stick to just the asterisk ones to give you the long-winded stories about. So the next one being the white Ludwig, the Ludwig Classic White Marine Pearl drum set, which is a beautiful drum set. And this one absolutely deserves an asterisk because I played this set for a long time. I played it in the Lincoln reunion shows, and let me pull up a pic. I also played it in Kukim, another band that I was in who toured. I played it for all of Kukim. I took it to Florida with me when I moved there. This is it right here. When I moved there in 1996. Oh, I also played it in all of Enderhall. It was another band that I played that in. There was another band called Clubber Lang that I played that drum set in. So this was my set for a long time. And I took that to Miami with me, and I played it in the band Hema, as well as, what else? I think that's pretty much all. I mean, I jammed with a lot of people, but that was the only real official band I was playing in down there for a while. So I had that drum set for a long time, and my mom bought it for me for my 18th birthday. And it was beautiful. I've never seen another one like it. I've seen plenty of White Marine Pearl Ludwigs, but none of them that have this same kind of hardware, like the long lugs like that, and also the same kind of mounting hardware, because that drum set was actually made for the drummer for Count Basie. It was a custom-made drum kit by Ludwig. And it came from, the store where it came from was Resurrection Drums, which is in Miami. And they told me the story of it. It was custom made for this guy. But then after Ludwig made the set, he switched to a different drum sponsor. I think he switched to Tama or somebody. And so he didn't end up taking the kit. And then Resurrection Drums ended up with it somehow. And then my mom bought it for me from them. And it was very nice. And I had cases. It was a 22 bass drum with a 13-inch rack tom, 16-inch floor tom, the famous Ludwig snare drum that everybody uses, that whatever it is, LM302 or something like that. And like a moron, I sold that thing in I think 1999. I traded it for some things. Now I did have my reason. I mean, for one, I was having a lot of problems then. I was really messed up on drugs and stuff. And drinking all the time and just partying way too much. And I just was messing my life up. But there was some logical reasoning why I wanted to get rid of it. And that being is the bass drum, for some reason, I always had trouble with the way it felt. It had a strange rebound to it. There was something about the air pressure or something. I mean, probably could have, now I'm sure I could resolve it. It was maybe heads or the way I was tuning or something. But for some reason, it always gave me a weird feeling on the bass drum when I played. It wasn't how it sounded. It sounded great. but just it didn't have like, I remember like when that Yamaha, like the beater would really just lay into the head, and it like I felt like I could be really fast, but on this Ludwig, I felt like it wanted to bounce back a lot, and I couldn't play quite as fast or as clean as I could on the Yamaha. As you know, that's how I felt at the time. So what I did is I traded it back to Resurrection Drums for, basically I had parts. Well, let me get to the next set here, the next kit after that, which is this Purple Slingerland, and well, it's purple and red sparkle. I had a red sparkle floor tom, a red snare drum, like red stain snare drum, and the bass drum and rack tom was like that satin flame, purple satin flame that Slingerland made. And I forget how I got those parts. I had the Slingerland stuff somewhere. I got them somewhere in Florida. I don't know where, but I had those, and I wanted to fix up that kit. And so I took my other drum set, the Ludwig, to Resurrection Drums, and basically traded them kind of outright for a new snare drum. It was a Legend snare drum, which was at the time a very expensive snare, and a floor tom, and some cymbals. I got like the Jack DeJohnette signature ride and some other cymbals. I think the hi-hats too. And so I traded, and the guy there, I remember the owner of Resurrection Drums was actually trying to talk me out of doing what I was doing. I should have listened to him, but I didn't. And it's not like, he gave me some good stuff, but just when you looked at the two things side by side, that white Ludwig just looked beautiful. When you looked at like what I was going to, it kind of looked like an old piece of junk. But it sounded great. The Slingerland stuff actually sounded really good, and I did play that for a few years after that. Or it was 2 years, according to my list here. So after I got that Purple Slingerland, at that point around there, I moved to Washington, D.C., and and that one does have an asterisk too, because I played that in the band The Boom, which we were playing a lot when I first moved to DC. We recorded an album. The Boom had a few albums out, but I'm not on any of the ones that got released. There is an unofficial release of the one that I'm on called The Life of a Star. It was supposed to be on some label or something like that, but the band kind of fizzled out before it even got released, so they decided not to release it. But it is out there. You can find it online. It's just called The Boom Life of a Star. And it's kind of like fusion jazz stuff. I think it's pretty good, but my problem with that album is like it was punk guys trying to be jazz, and they did okay, but it's like kind of like, just play punk, you're not jazz, like, or just play alternative or something that's jazz influenced. But there's guys that go to school and really train to be jazz players, and they can do it really well. And we weren't really one of those bands, in my opinion. Like, I feel like that they were like, they were already doing that before I joined. And like, I got there, the drummer had left, and they had gigs lined up. So they asked me if I wanted to play, and I was like, sure. So anyway, I played that drum set in that band, recorded with it. And then I bought this in 2000. I was still living in DC, and I bought this vintage, this yellow, it looked like a yellow bumblebee finish Pearl drum set. And that one I wish I had held on to longer, but I really didn't use it that much. I moved back to Morgantown like shortly after buying it, and I rehearsed with a band with it for a few times that I don't think the band ever really went anywhere. And then I don't really know what happened to it. And after the one that's listed there after that, I had this giant, like, big wooden Rogers. And when I say big, it was like big as in sizes. It was like a 24-inch bass drum and like a 14-inch rack tom and 18-inch floor tom, I think. And they were like all like concert toms with no bottom heads. And so it's possible that I traded that Pearl for that, but I don't know. I don't really remember. Excuse me. Still kind of messed up on drugs at that point. So that's why my memory is like not so great around that period. So, but that would make sense. I mean, I don't really remember how I got the Rogers, and I don't remember how I got rid of the vintage Pearl. So it could have been something like that, where I traded that Pearl for the Rogers. which might have been it. I don't know. So the Rogers I had for a little while, and then I ended up getting this red sparkle Ludwig from a friend of mine. And I do remember this because I think at that point I was starting to get a little bit better, trying to get off the drugs and stuff, even though I hadn't totally kicked it, but I was at least trying. And I got this red Ludwig from a friend of mine named Chris. And I forget, like, if I traded, maybe I traded the Rogers for it, but I feel like I had that Rogers for a while, like even while I had the red Ludwig. But I was playing the red Ludwig pretty much all the time. Like, that was my set for a while. And it was bebop sizes, 1960s, red. Oh, I have a photo of that thing. Let me pull that up. So, I don't have a photo of the Pearl, unfortunately. Let's see. Where is it? Oh, wait, did I download that? I might have to get it off my Google. And the only reason why I still have all these photos is because I've been backing up my photos to Google Photos since like 2005. So I have a lot of photos on there. I don't think I downloaded it though. So give me a second to find that. But anyway, the red Ludwig, I played in several bands. But I don't really feel like at that point in my life I wasn't doing so well. That was probably my lowest point as far as like, you know, just having drug problems and having personal issues, and I just was not happy. I was like really miserable at that point. Let's see, hold on. Drum set. So yeah, but I played that drum set for a few years. And it's going to be too hard to find the photo. Sorry. I'm just going to skip over a photo of that one because I didn't actually download it. But it was like a red sparkle. I mean, you've seen them. You've seen drum sets like that. It was a red sparkle, jazz-looking Ludwig. So let's go back to the list. After that, I had... Oh, and it's a shame I couldn't find that photo because I had a photo of these two sets together. I bought a black... It was like... Actually, it looked a lot like the Phoenix... Nate, if you're still watching, it looked a lot like that set that you play, which is just like a black, like drum set, you know, like, and I found one that looked like that. It had no names on it or anything like that. And I bought it at a garage sale for like $50 in Florida. And that drum set actually sounded pretty nice, like surprisingly. I didn't play it that long, because I ended up buying this blue Ludwig. I've always really liked Ludwig drums, and I used to try to get those a lot. So I bought this blue, it was a super classic, a blue Ludwig super classic. And I do have a photo of that one, so let me pull that up. And the black one, the black garage sale set really didn't last that long. And I think I forget what I did with it. I probably sold it or gave it away or something. So here's the blue... Well, it's a tiny photo. That's the blue Ludwig Super Classic. And here I'm playing with a band called The Girls Named Lourdes, which actually is we were a really awesome band. I'm not just saying that. Like you should check out the recording. I should play a song actually on the stream. We were really heavy. My friend Dan was on guitar. You can't really see Dan or Garo there, his face, because their backs are, well, Garo's covering Dan and Garo's back is to the camera. But this drum set was a similar era to the white Ludwig. And that was why I bought it. It had the same, it was made around the same time, but the sizes were quite different on this one. This had a 20-inch bass drum and a 10-inch rack tom and a 14-inch floor tom. So it was actually pretty small. And it's kind of crazy that I was playing such heavy music on such a tiny little drum set. But it sounded nice. I'm going to go ahead and play a Girls Named Lourdes, or at least part of one. Maybe I don't want to break up this stream, the talk, too much, so I'll play just part of a song by Girls Named Lourdes. So you guys can hear what this thing sounded like and also hear what Girls Named Lourdes sounded like. And we were, like I said, I thought we were a really good band, but this was right towards the end of my issues with, substances. And let me play a little second of this, and then I'll tell you guys the story. After this quiet part comes the guitar solo that just really rocks. All right, so I just pasted the link to the Girls Named Lourdes album on there. It's more like an EP, so if you want to check that out, I highly recommend it. We were around for about 2 years, I think, and but like I was saying, that was right when I was like, I knew I wanted to quit doing drugs and quit partying and stuff like that, but those guys were kind of on a different page, so I pretty much had to break it off with them, like on every level. Like I just couldn't be around them. And it's unfortunate that, you know, with Dan, we were roommates at that time too. And, he actually ended up passing away, later in 2012 when I first moved to New York City. He was in an automobile accident and, passed away. So, but I think I talked to him once or twice before that happened. But yeah, sad ending, but you know, it's still a really, really awesome recording, and it's still something I'm really proud of. Even though on a personal level, you know, we were on different pages, so we had to go our different ways. But what you heard right there was that exact drum set, and actually it was recorded right there where you're looking. And those might even be the mics. That might even be from when we were recording, quite possibly. And it looks super ghetto, like how we had it set up, but it totally worked. Like we somehow managed to get a really good sounding recording. I mean, I had a good interface with a lot of input, so we were able to do a lot of mics, and that helped. So yeah, that whole recording sounds really good, especially for the time. Let's see. Phoenix Nate says mine is some made in China thing. I got it used off my aunt, who got it used from some guy who bought it in a local music store in Missouri called Rockland. Yeah, the garage sale one I had was very similar. It was like a Chinese thing too, and it didn't have any branding on it, and it looked just like that one you have. It was just black, you know, and like had like a chrome snare. Asaf says, what was your best drums or snare like in all you way drumming? There was some special drum that you remember. Well, I think like one of my favorite snare drums was the one from the white Ludwig, which I forget those model names. If somebody can remember it, help me out. Which was the drum set that I showed you guys a little while ago. Let me pull it back up. Where is it? It's too hard to find these things. They're all in different folders. I'm just gonna go back later and look. But yeah, that snare I really liked a lot. But you know, honestly, I mean, after playing drums for so many years, it's almost what really makes me like a drum set, like almost more than anything, is how it looks. Honestly, quite honestly, because I can get any drum set to sound good. They all sound good. You can get any drums to sound good. As long as you have good heads and you tune them correctly, then you could pretty much get any drum set. Well, and as long as the rims aren't bent or the edges are messed up or something like that, that can cause problems. But if all that is true, it doesn't really matter. I mean, honestly, I tend to like, I mean, they also, like, even right now, like, my acoustic snare drum that I'm playing is a 12. It's a small snare. And I used to think I didn't like snares that small, but it's fine. I have it tuned now in a way that I really like. And so they all sound good. It's very rare that I'll find a drum that, like I said, unless it's like physically damaged, there's very little that can be wrong with a drum. So a lot of times I'll go by with the way they look, even though I have kept like very weird drum sets for a long time, and I'll get to that here in a second. Oops, sorry, wrong screen. Okay, let's go back to this. Jesus, I've got to move faster. This is going to take forever. All right, so we're at the Gretch Catalina Birch. Let's go over this one very quickly. This one was one that my sister had given me, because she was living in New York City and she didn't have anywhere to put it. I was still living in Florida at that time, and I have a couple photos of this one. And this one got an asterisk because I played this in theater in Florida. I was playing for Florida Studio Theater, and here's a photo. And this was before I had my teeth fixed. So yeah, that's the Gretch Catalina Birch, and this is during a show of Hedwig and the Angry Inch that I was in. And so that's me, and I played that drum set there. And that's pretty much the only place I ever really used it. But it was a nice set. It sounded really good. It's on some recordings, though. It's on my album, Part of It, pretty much exclusively. I played that drum set, and it was a nice sounding set. It had a really warm tone to it. Very warm, and it wasn't bright sounding at all. Like, the toms were very dark and warm. So yeah, that was a cool set. But unfortunately, that one I lost in a bad Sam Ash deal, which, I'm trying to move faster here. So let's get to that. Let's see. And I ended up with a Ludwig accent combo. And I've told this story before on here, but I'm going to go over it very quickly again. The Ludwig accent combo was a cheap Ludwig, not an expensive Ludwig at all, and definitely not worth the money that the Catalina Birch was worth at all. Though it sounded pretty good, and I used it. I played a lot of gigs with that Ludwig, but how I ended up with it is, okay, I went to Sam Ash. I was in Clearwater, Florida, and I had that Gretsch. I walked into Sam Ash one day, and there was this Ludwig Vistalite Quadra Plus. Now, if you don't know what those are, just Google it. Ludwig Vistalite Quadra Plus. And I saw it in there, and it was used. And I was like, oh, man, I would love to have that thing. And so but I didn't have any money. And I was like, wonder if they'd trade my my Catalina Birch for that. And so I went up and I asked the guy, but I was looking at it a little bit closer, and I noticed that the Quadra Plus was missing a lot of parts. Like, it was missing some of the hoops, it was missing like bass drum legs, and it had some cracks on it and stuff like that. And so I was like, it's in kind of bad condition. So what I did is I was like, okay, I asked the guy working there in the drum department, and I was like, hey, would you want to trade this Catalina Birch, but on one condition, that you also order me all the parts I need to fix up this Quadra Plus. And he was like, yeah, we could probably do that. And he's like, bring in the Catalina Birch, let me take a look at it. So I brought it in, and he was like, yeah, we could do that. And I was like, okay, I want all new heads. I told him everything I wanted. I was like, I want all new heads. I want the hoops. I need some hoops. I need a bass drum hoop. I need some mounting hardware. Like, I had this whole list of stuff, and he's writing it all down. And so I took the parts that he did have home, and I was waiting probably like 2 weeks, no call from the guy. And then, like, I was getting really annoyed, so I went up to Sam Ash, and I'm like, hey man, I've been waiting for you for a long time to get the parts for this. We made a deal, where's the parts for the Ludwig? And he's like, He's like, oh yeah, they're coming. And then like I was just starting to get a really sketchy vibe from the dude. And I'm like, well, what about the heads? Can you at least give me the heads? And he's like, yeah, okay, go out to the parking lot and I'll bring them out. And then so like I'm out of the parking lot and he's like sneaking drum heads out the back door, like literally stealing them and like shoving them in my car. And I'm like, dude, I'm like, what are you doing? I'm like, this is not part of the deal. Like, I don't want you to steal stuff and give it to me. Like I thought we had an actual deal. And I was like, forget it. I'm bringing back the Ludwig. I want my old drums back. And he's like, yeah, see, the thing about that is, and like, he'd already sold the Catalina Birch. And I was like, dude, you know, what can I take in here? And he was like, I have a Ludwig. You can have this other Ludwig. And I go, and it was an accent combo. And I was like, man, that is not, you know, that's worth like half of the amount of, you know, what I gave you. And he's like, oh, that's all I have. And like, I was really annoyed, but I took it anyways. And I think I got like all free heads and like, I got some extra stuff out of the deal. But much to my surprise, when I got the Ludwig accent combo home, well, you know, like I was saying before, you can get any drum set to sound good. I got that thing to sound great, you know, and I liked the sizes of it a lot. It had cool sizes. It had a 20-inch bass drum, 12, 13, and 14-inch toms. Like, it was like kind of weird, but cool sizes. Or no, sorry, it was 10, 12, and 14. That's what it was. A 20-inch bass drum. And then it had a really nice sounding snare on it. And I was playing in this R&B group for a while, doing like covers and stuff. It was kind of like a money gig in Tampa. And I'd left it out in the car one time, and like the sun was on it, and it made the wrap on it just bubble like crazy. And so I had to peel off all the wrap, and then underneath the wood looked kind of ugly, so I just spray painted it silver. And I played it for a little while, and it's on a few recordings. But let me move past that. You know, it's not an asterisk one, but, you know, it wasn't that bad. But still, I got screwed on the deal. So after that, Tama Slingerland oh, yeah, okay. So that one, the next one after that was this Tama Slingerland. And I say Slingerland just because the mounting hardware was Slingerland. The rest of it, I believe, was Tama and maybe some generic stuff that I got off this guy, who had a storage unit filled with drums in Florida. And he just wanted to sell the entire storage unit. So I just bought them all. I bought everything he had. And it was like a really cheap price, too. It was like $300 for like 4 drum sets. Like, it was like crazy. I had like all this. And at that point, I was living alone in this apartment. And basically my entire apartment was just filled with drums. And so I sold most of them and then kept one. Let me pull up a photo. I do have photos of these. One was this Tama. It was like parts that the guy had put together himself. Right here it is. Open up the other screen. So, and don't look at the stuff to the left of me there. Those are Brazilian drums that I added on. But like the gray drums, and yeah, so it was a 20-inch kick drum, 12-inch rack tom, and a 15-inch floor tom, which was kind of odd, but it sounded pretty good. And then, so that one I played for a few gigs, but then at the same time, I also got this really, by all, like, you know, it should have just been a piece of crap that nobody would want to keep. But for some reason, I don't know why, I just decided to do something with it. But let me pull up a photo first so you can see what I'm talking about. This is just a single drum, but the whole drum set looked like this. It was a TKO percussion, ROC made drum set that was basically a piece of crap. And so I had this drum set, and I was like, at the time, I was really obsessed with these Slingerland concert tom sets. And I was like, maybe I could take this drum set and modify it and turn it into one of these, to look like one of these old Slingerland concert tom drum sets. So that's what I did. Let me show you a couple more parts of that set before I changed anything. So here's the floor tom, I think. And then the bass drum. The bass drum had a Slingerland logo head on it, but it definitely wasn't a Slingerland. It was TKO. So that's what that drum set looked like when I bought it. And so what I did to it was, well, first I stripped all the wrap off of the whole thing, and then I refinished the whole drum set with an oil lacquer. Well, before I did that, I literally sawed the bottoms of the toms off. So I shortened the length of the toms. And then I refinished the whole thing because I wanted it to be like a 1970s concert tom drum set. So here is what it looked like after I first finished it. And so what you just saw there actually turned into this. I replaced the bass drum spurs. I made them, they were vintage, style spurs I put on there. Like I said, I sawed off the bottom of the rack toms. And then I had an extra rack tom too. Like the third rack tom you see there, the 14-inch rack tom was from another, I think I got in that same deal, but it was a different brand. But it was also a made in China or Taiwan type thing, and had the same kind of looking lugs on it. So I just pieced all those together, and I created that. And at first it was like that, but this drum set actually lasted me many, many years. And I've talked about this on here several times, and it went through like a lot of different changes. Like I modded the hell out of this thing, and I kept changing it. So at first it looked like that, and then the second iteration of it looked like, let me find it, like this. And a couple changes here you might notice is I put front hardware on the bass drum. And the reason why I did that is because it started to bend, because the shell was, it was so old and like having no support on the front, and all the weight from the toms, it started to kind of warp a little bit. So I was like, I better put front hardware back on this thing. And then the bottom of the toms, the chrome you see there is actually that's actually like that metal tape, like aluminum tape. And the reason why I did that is because the old Slingerlands, they had this chrome edge on the bottom, even on the concert toms, and I just thought it looked really cool. So I was trying to emulate that. So that was the second iteration of that drum set. The third iteration, I changed it yet again. Looked like, let me find it. Where are you? Wait, do I have a photo of it? I know I have photos of it, but oh yeah, here it is. So, third iteration. Same drum set again. Now, you'll notice that there's suddenly bottom hardware on there again. That is because one of those toms, actually no, that rack tom was that was from a different drum set, but I got that separately and finished it to match the other ones. So the bass drum and the floor tom, I put the hardware back on the floor tom, and then I used this rack tom. That was a 12-inch rack tom, 22-inch bass drum, a 16-inch floor tom. Honestly, though, when I'm playing a 16-inch floor tom, I never really like a 12-inch rack tom, and that always bothered me. Like, I prefer to have a 13. So this drum set actually made it with me to New York City, but when I came to New York City, I switched that back to the 13-inch, and then also switched back to concert toms. So let me pull up the, what am I on, fourth iteration? Fourth and final iteration of that drum set. And wow, that's a huge photo. And this is right when I first moved to New York in 2012 and got the drums out of storage. And when I set them up in my kitchen, that's what they looked like. So this drum set, let me get back to the list. That is the, what did I call that one? The TKO percussion piece kit. I always used the Ludwig. Oh, I skipped over the Ludwig rocker. So I'll have to get back to that briefly. But shortly before that, I had an old Ludwig rocker, and I stole the snare drum from the Ludwig rocker, kept it, and sold the rocker, and kept playing that rocker snare with the TKO concert tom set that you had seen in all those different photos that I just showed you. But anyway, I built that set in 2009, and then played it all the way up until 2015. So that was actually one of the longest, probably the longest drum set I ever played, which is so crazy. It was such a piece of crap. You know, it was just a TKO percussion, but I played it in a lot. It went on 2 tours. I played it in Quiet Sons. I played it in all the Children of Moo stuff. I played it on the first Minnesota album. A lot of early Demonic Sweaters stuff. So yeah, that was that one definitely deserves the asterisk because it was one that I played for a really long time, and it was on a lot of stuff. And I liked that drum set too. It sounded really cool, and it was fun to play. Especially I really liked it, especially in the last iteration that I had. Just a 4-piece setup with the concert toms. Let me get back to the photo. Let me show you one where I had it all set up with the cymbals and stuff. And well, they're there, but you can't really see them. I'll find another one. It's very dark, but that's it there. This is at a Quiet Sons gig. So yeah, that was that drum set, the TKO Percussion. And it went from that gold, that crappy gold wrap looking finish to that dark walnut stain. And that's how it stayed for a long time. And I ended up giving that to my friend's son when I bought my Tama Imperial Star. All right, let me read some of these comments. We're finally getting through this list. We're almost getting to modern day. Let's see. John Deff says, had a 5-piece Ludwig blue Vistalite set with Peisty Sound Edge hi-hats in 2002 that I sold. Still kicking myself 35 years later. Yeah, that sounds like... That's definitely a kick yourself setup for sure. I feel your pain. Yeah, blue Vistalite. That's a sweet one. Vistalite sounds so good too. Phoenix Nate says, I'm watching this on my laptop. I'm like a minute behind on latency. I think it just does that too, in general. I think it's just YouTube. John Deff says, my brother had Octopus clear black. Oh, wow. That sounds awesome. Octopuses were huge. Those were giant. And my friend had clear blue Octopus. Wow. Nice. And Phoenix Nate says, my school has a Ludwig accent combo. They're not bad. I mean, they look cheap, but they sound pretty good, honestly. I'd play one now. I wouldn't be opposed to playing one of those. John Deff says, I have a 2012 14 mid-60s Ludwig Silver Sparkle now. Well, that's nice. I mean, that sounds like you're doing all right on the style, drum style. Then, do you have one set that you consider the best sounding? Yamaha Birch is the best I ever played. Best sounding, I don't know. I've gotten much better at recording, in the past 10 years. So if you go by my recordings, my more recent ones sound the best, but, it's hard for me to say. Honestly, that TKO, it sounded pretty damn good. It was loud, too. But, I don't know. I can, like I said, I can get any drum set to sound good. So let me quickly talk about the rocker, because the rocker I did play in a few bands, but it's the one I had right before getting that TKO. And I sold the rocker but kept the snare. The snare went along with the TKO. All right, where's the rocker? The rocker was ridiculous. It was amazing but ridiculous because it was freaking huge. There it is right there. It was so big. It's almost hard to tell how big it was there because there's nothing to put it in proportion, but it was actually a 24-inch bass drum, 12, 13, and 16-inch toms that were deep, really deep. It was, when I had it set up to play, this is how I set it up. I didn't use both toms. I just used the big one. Where's the photo? Here it is. Right there. So that's how I played it, and I had to tilt my rack tom more than I ever do just because it was so giant on top of that bass drum. But that drum kit sounded really good, too. Ludwig rockers are a great deal in drums. You can still find those for, not that expensive, and they're great, great sounding drums. Maple poplar shells. if you find the USA made ones. The later ones in the 90s were made in Taiwan, but they're also pretty nice. They're a different shell type, and they look different, but they're just different. These ones are more like your classic Ludwigs, just cheaper, but they share a lot. They have different lugs on them. That's the main difference. The shells are pretty much the same as the classic Ludwigs. They have different lugs, and that's about it, though. Sizes could vary. Like, you'll find some that are more normal sizes. This one was huge. But I actually got a good bit of money out of that thing when I sold it. I think I sold it for $800 without a snare, which was surprising, but it did look really nice, because it was in great shape, and just that it was huge, like, I guess that made it kind of rare to have one of those sizes. So yeah, and the guy who bought it was really happy with it too. So yeah, I had that briefly, and then when I got that TKO, the TKO just basically took over, and I used it for everything for a long time. And I think also because it was such a customized drum set is why I was so attached to it. TKO again. And this is when I was doing Minnesota, the first Minnesota album. And also, that drum set survived being 100% submerged in water 2 times. Like, the first time being Hurricane Sandy. When I first moved to New York City, Hurricane Sandy hit here, which was crazy. And my rehearsal space got flooded, and I couldn't make it over there for like a week afterwards. And when I got there, I literally dumped water out of the bass drum like it was a bucket. It was just filled with water. And the reason why it survived is because of that oil lacquer finish that I did on it. And when I finished it, I did the inside and outside of the shells. Not planning that at all, but it just so happened to be the thing that saved it from getting any kind of water damage because it was effectively water sealed. Although the hardware started to crap out after a while. And that was one of the reasons why I wanted to replace it, because a lot of lugs started to break, and I was having trouble with the bass drum spurs, and every couple weeks something else metal was breaking on it. And I think it was because it got wet. The other time it got wet is when I was in a service elevator that plunged to the basement of this warehouse that was filled with water for some reason, and that was terrifying. I thought I was going to die. But yeah, so that's the second time it got submerged in water. And yeah, but so I got rid of that. I gave it to my friend's son, like I said. And then now we're finally up to the modern days, sorta. I picked up the Tama Imperial Star in 2015, Tama Imperial Star Bop, which I had all the way up until last year. And let me find the photo of it. This is when I first... Oh, why is it the wrong rotation? Whatever. There's a video of me unboxing this set on YouTube. So this is the Tama Imperial Star. Can I rotate this? Let's see. Rotate. There we go. So yeah, this is actually when I was unboxing it, I think. So you could find that video on my channel. Just search Tama Imperial Star Bop unboxing. And it's an old video I did, but that was a good kit. And I played that one. This one definitely gets an asterisk because this is on the vast majority of the Demonic Sweaters recordings. All the way up until the most recent one that's coming out on the 17th, Earth Asylum. Because I was still recording with this up until right when I got rid of it. And the only reason why I got rid of it was just because of space. I mean, I actually really did like this set. But that happens a lot, like I just run out of space and I like getting new stuff. So now I have, I don't want to get ahead here in the list. So this one, though, was a very important set. Let me make sure I didn't skip over anything. So we went over the TKO. Oh, well, Chealsea Slingerland. I have this on the list. Even though this technically wasn't my drum set, it's my sister's, I played it a lot. I played this also in Quiet Sons and also in Minnesota and also on some Demonic Sweaters. And the reason being is because we had a shared rehearsal space. And sometimes hers was set up there, so I would end up using it. It's also in several of my YouTube videos as well, the older ones. And that's a great sounding drum set. Blue Sparkle, Vintage Slingerland. Even though it wasn't mine, but I still put it on the list because I did play it and record with it a lot. So the Tama Imperial Star. And let me read some of the comments, then we'll get on to the rest of them here, and then we might actually make it through this entire list in this stream. Hopefully you guys are finding this to be entertaining. It's mostly, I just wanted to do this because I think it's, interesting to me because of all these drums that I've had over the years. So, John Deff says, Phoenix Nate says, I'll send you a picture of it when I can get back into school. Our roads are totally covered with ice right now. Yeah, well, here we have like mountains of snow, like on the sides of the road. Like it's crazy. But yeah, be safe on the roads if you go out there. John Deff says, I live in Columbus, Ohio. We have a great drum shop, Columbus Percussion. Oh, very cool. Also, 2 music go-rounds. Oh, those are great. Music go-rounds is crazy, the deals you find on those. Like, their websites are insane. Lots of vintage drums. I don't know how they get so many. It's crazy. Yeah, good stuff. All right, so let's move on to Sun Drums. Now, Sun Drums is another YouTube project. Phoenix Nate says, I find this very entertaining. Thank you. If you want to see all about the Sun Drums, you could just search on my channel, Sun Drums. And the Sun Drums, let me pull up a photo. These were mostly all parts that I found in the trash that I did a very similar thing to what I did to the TKO percussion. Another one rotated the wrong way. Let's see, transform. Here we go. So very similar concept. And these, so the bass drum, the 5 main drums you see there, like the 2 rack toms, bass drum, and the floor tom, not these 2 on the side. These are Slingerlands on the side here that I found later. But all of it's documented in the videos about it. Like those 5 main drums I got from the rehearsal space where I was rehearsing with Ronan at the time. They were abandoned. And they were, I believe, not Purecussion. What's the other? Groove Percussion or Groove, some kind of generic, brand, something like that. And they were like the same color as the hoops. They were like this red, hoop. And so I actually rewrapped those in automobile wrap. And they looked really good. They looked really, really cool. And as you can tell, though, right there, it's literally in a storage space because I had nowhere to put those things. And the 2 auxiliary toms, like the 13 and 14-inch toms on the side there, were Slingerlands that I found on Craigslist for a really good deal. I forget how much I paid, but I say it in the video. So I put this whole thing together over probably about 2 months. And I have some more photos of it. Let me pull another one up. I have some where I'm actually set up with cymbals and stuff on it. Hey, here we go. And I played this on Antimatter Is video and on the recording. And I also played it on some of Ronan's stuff, I think. And I did a Kiss tribute show because that was essentially why I was building it. Kinda. I mean, I was listening to a lot of Kiss at the time. And I had this gig with these guys in New Jersey that was in full makeup and costume, and I wanted something that really fit the part. So I was like, I'm gonna make a Peter Criss drum set, and that's what I did. And it sounded freaking awesome, but I had nowhere to put it, so I gave it away. I just put an ad on Craigslist, and a couple kids reached out, and I was like, sure, come pick it up. So I gave them the address to the storage unit, and I just gave it to him. So I've done that with several I did that with the TKO percussion too. I gave it to my friend's son, that one. I have no idea if he's still using it or anything. And the kids that I gave this one to, they never let me know what they did with it. I mentioned that in one of the other streams. Like I was like, yeah, send me a link, if you use it or anything. Nothing. Never heard back anything. But like, whatever. They're like, I say kids, but they were like 18, 20 years old. So that one is gone, but that was the Sun Drums. If you want to see the whole series of me putting that whole thing together, it's on my channel. And let's go back to the list. So after Sun Drums, and I still had the Tama Imperial Star Bop, and though in 2018, I bought the Alesis Nitro. And you guys all know about the Alesis Nitro. A lot of you found my channel because of that. And that was the first electronic drum set that I bought. Oh, I forgot. Wait, I skipped over. Sorry, jumping around here. I skipped over my homemade electronic drum set back in 2008. So let me just quickly bring up a photo of that. Which I didn't have it for very long. But I did record some music with it. It's on a couple songs. Where is it? And I did manage to find a photo of it set up today, too. If I can find it. Here it is. Okay, so this was a homemade drum set that I had made, and electronic drum set. I made like everything. I made the triggers. I didn't make the shells of the toms, obviously. But if you look at the toms there, those are actually that Ludwig accent combo shells. I think I had one rack tom left, and I think I sold the rest of it, but I kept the one rack tom and I sawed it in half and turned that into two electronic drums. And I never got around to making the floor tom, so it just had hi-hat. Wait, I have there's another photo of this thing where you could see more. I don't even think that's when it was done, totally. So this thing was actually my first experiment in electronic drums. Where is it? Thought I had another photo. Maybe not. Oh, here it is. Okay. So here's another photo. And my cymbals were like hilarious. But they worked. They actually they weren't that bad. These were basically two pieces of particle board with sanding block foam in between, mouse pads, and piezos. And I never got around to the floor tom, like I said. The module was what the hell was that thing called? Well, actually I had two modules that I tried with it. One of them was an Alesis, an old Alesis. I think it was DM5, DM4, possibly. And then the other one was a weird brand. I can't remember the name. There was a company called Sigler Music that was on eBay that sold very cheap electronic drum sets. They were the only people selling cheap electronic drum sets in the mid-2000s. And I wonder if Justin from 65 Drums knows about those guys. I can't remember what their brand was called, but I remember the name of the store was called Sigler Music. And I bought one of their modules, which really wasn't that bad. And it worked surprisingly well, and it sounded better than the Alesis one, actually. And that's why I ended up using the Sigler one on the recordings that I made with this thing. Songs that I played with this are Life of a Goldfish, and there's another one that I can't remember the name. Life of a Goldfish is pretty cool, though. It's on an older album. I think it's on Karuja. But I used that. But the problem is with this thing is the rack. I didn't really have an actual plan like for the rack. I just sort of eyeballed it. I had like all these PVC pipes, and I just sawed them I didn't measure anything. I just totally eyeballed it and set it all up. And it ended up being really awkward to play. And so I just was like, I don't know. And I think I was also driving my downstairs neighbor crazy. So I just got rid of it. And I actually sold it. I sold it on eBay for like a couple $100. Somebody actually bought that thing. But, it worked. It worked not too bad. And it with the module, it sounded pretty good. So, okay, let's move on, though, to the Alesis Nitro, which you guys all know. Which really brought me into the world of electronic drums, was the Alesis Nitro. And, basically changed my whole channel and my whole approach to making music in a lot of ways, because I used to be kind of like not that into electronic drums, but now I think they're awesome. So Alesis Nitro definitely had a big impact on me as a drummer. Just because, there were never electronic drum sets, and I had addition crash there. But there were never electronic drum sets this cheap that didn't suck before. Alesis were the first ones to really do it right. And it's very limited compared to like a Roland or something like that. But still, for the money, I mean, they're pretty damn good. They're solid. They're well made. I never got a single like double trigger on that thing or mistrigger. It always triggered 100% accurately. I never had problems with mine. I know some people have problems with the hi-hat pedal. I hear that a lot from people. But personally, I never did. I just, it was a great set for what it was. But again, space. I bought other things and I had to move on from Alesis, but still, this one definitely gets an asterisk in my drumming history. Alesis Nitro, definitely an important drum set. Let's see some of these comments. Phoenix Nate says, I've been wanting to go to Music Go Round. They have websites. You can find a lot of stuff on there. John Deff says, nice looking set. Thanks. And Phoenix Nate asks, what was the bass drum made of on the 2008 E-drum kit? Now, I don't have a close-up photo of that, but that was one of my best homemade triggers. And that one was like 100% homemade. And what it was is I took 2 pieces of plywood with some metal shelving supports. So basically I created like 2 rectangles, one on the ground and one like this. And I had this support back there. And then I had the bottom one was the right size for a bass drum pedal to clip onto. And then I created using the sanding block foam and then another piece of particle board, the same way I did on the cymbals. I sandwiched some things together and I put a piezo back behind there. And that thing worked great. Like it triggered amazingly well. It was crazy how good it worked. It was totally like just made up. Like I had no idea what I was doing. And I was like, maybe this will work. And it totally did. Like it worked really, really good actually. And it was sturdy too. Like it was really heavy because of the parts that I used. It was super, super good. So Alesis Nitro, that was 2018. And then I put the Donner DED 200 on here, even though technically I only had that thing for about a couple months. And it was sent to me for free. But it was something that I owned. And then I sold it. But, I got it just... Basically, Donner just sent it to me to do a review. But it was a decent set, But I think for the money... that and the Nitro are very similarly priced, so I would probably still go with the Nitro because I've heard a lot of bad things about the USB MIDI capabilities on those Donners, even though personally when I tried it, it seemed to work okay, but I didn't really use it for very long. It was just like basically that day I just tested it out, made the video, and unhooked it. That was pretty much it. John Deff says, I got my first E-kit 3 years ago. They are so much fun. Yeah, totally. Very fun. So the Donner, I put it on the list just because of that. And we're almost to the end of the list. Okay, so Tama Club Jam Mini. This is my current acoustic drum. Well, it's actually a hybrid setup. And this one definitely gets an asterisk already. And let me bring up a photo. I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen this already. Because this is the one that I'm playing right now. And it was just in my last drum vlog. But here it is. And this is the Club Jam Mini with the add-on pack with the toms. And it's a great kit. It's a really great kit. Sounds really good. Even before I was running it as a hybrid, even mic'd up just by itself, I got some really great sounds out of it. It's on Minnesota As the Sun Rises on a couple of the songs. And even though my TD5 is on a lot of that as well, but I did use this on there. And this is also on one song on the new album that's coming out, Earth Asylum. I played the Club Jam Mini on No Pixels, the track No Pixels. But I played it as the hybrid. So right now I have it set up as a hybrid with triggers with the TD6. But you still get both sounds. You get the acoustic and the electronic sound. But the main reason why... Well, I originally bought this set was because I wanted to make this into a conversion kit using the Alesis Nitro module. And if you go back to my videos, I know Nate has seen this because he's definitely been following me that long, and we've talked about it and stuff. But I bought this originally for that project, which didn't work too well, mostly due to the Alesis Nitro module. Now, the Alesis Nitro module is great on the Alesis Nitro, but not great if you're trying to make a hybrid setup, because it lacks a lot of the features that you need and fine-tuning settings, or conversion setup rather, to basically they designed that module to work perfectly with those triggers that it comes with, and it does work perfectly with those. But if you try to use other stuff, it's gonna be hit or miss, and mostly miss. So, but I originally bought this to do that, and then I had a failure, and I was like, well, maybe I should just play this drum set acoustically. And then I took it over to my drum room, and I ended up really liking it. And then I was like, well, what the hell am I going to do with my Imperial Star now? Because I have no space for that. So I had to sell the Imperial Star. Perfect world, I would have kept both, but I can't. So I got rid of the Imperial Star, then started playing this acoustic. But at that point, I'd already sold my Nitro. So I was like, well, what am I going to do about my electronic kit now? Then I bought the Tama Club Jam Flyer, and then tried the next electronic conversion kit, originally using the TD5, which went much better than the Nitro. And now this is my main electronic kit, which I have over there, which has evolved to a much more expensive conversion kit with a TD27 and a TD17, switching back and forth. Right now it's got the 27 on it. But that drum set, again, an asterisk, I've already used that a lot. It's been on all of, a lot of the last Minnesota album, as well as almost all of Can You Draw Me? Except for there is the Club Jam Mini is on a little bit of that as well. But in a lot of new stuff, this is on. Is That Donnie? Is this kit? I know different modules on a lot of the stuff, but it's still the same setup. So both of those Club Jams already get asterisks. Now the Pile Tabletop Kit is on the list because it is another drum set I own, even though it's a little electronic, tabletop drum set. And as well as the Drumcat DK10, which is another compact tabletop thing. And actually, I just got the DK10 back from alternate mode today. I'd sent it back into them to do some adjustments on it because I wasn't getting the sensitivity that I liked out of it. So I sent it to them, and they just sent it back. I haven't tested it, but it should work now because originally I replaced the FSR myself, and I don't think I did a very good job. So I sent it to them and had them do it the real way. Because it was actually kind of a harder job than I thought it would be, because those things are like, they have this adhesive back on them, and you have like one chance to put it on there correctly, and if you screw it up, you're fucked. Pardon my French, but so I don't know if I got it on there right. Well, I don't think I did. She said that there was probably an air bubble under it when I did it, and that's why I was because what was happening is one of the zones on it was like I had to hit it really hard to get the velocity that I liked out of it. And so she said that there was probably an air bubble under there, and that was causing the issue. So they had to basically peel it off and put a new one on there. So it's sitting in a box right over here. I haven't opened it yet, but hopefully that'll work good now. The Pile Tabletop Kit I played with Ronan Conroy last year at Alex's Barbecue Show, which is here on YouTube. And that drum set sounds pretty good for what it is. The only issue with those is the pedals. They're switches. They're not piezos, so they kind of suck. They don't have very good response, but the sounds in them are pretty good. John Deff asked if I'm using module sounds or VST. Always a module. The only time I've used VST sounds for drums are when I used the Drumcat while I was in Florida, and I was using Easy Drummer just because it was easier to travel with than to take a module. But I much prefer the sounds of the TD17 and the TD27 to Easy Drummer. I don't know. I know people like that software, but to me, they sound much more processed and just kind of generic sounding than the sound. Like, because especially in the TD27, you have so much editing you can do. Like, an insane amount of editing. It's crazy. And the TD17, too, is pretty good. Like you can do like layering of sounds and like different, tunings and ambience and all this stuff. And you just have much more control over how it sounds. On Easy Drummer, it's kind of like you have a couple things you can change, but there's actually not that many sounds. First off, there's not that many samples. And a lot of the samples that they use are way too like modern pop sounding for me. Like I just don't really like that style drum sound. I mean, they sound good, good technically, but it's just not my style, So for me, I much prefer the TD. The TD27 is by far the best module I've ever used. I've never used a TD50, but personally, I like the 27 better in a lot of ways because it's so much more compact, and it actually has more built-in sounds than the 50 does. The 50 has a few more added editing features, but it's also a lot more expensive, and they both can use digital triggers, which I don't have any digital triggers yet, but I think the TD27 bang for your buck is probably the best module you can buy, personally. But maybe if I had a TD50, I would say the same thing. But the cool thing about the TD27 is, like I said, it's smaller. It's about the size of the TD17. You can see it over there. And the TD50 is like huge. Like they're like ridiculously huge. And another cool thing about the 27 is, what was I going to say? Well, it's newer. It's newer than the TD50, actually. It came out after the TD50. So in a way, it's like a more modern module than the TD50 is. And John Deff says, I have a Yamaha DD65 tabletop, and it actually sounds good. Yeah, the Yamaha, I should have got that instead of the Pile. But I have the Drum Cat. So I use and I forgot to mention the Smart Wave. The Smart Wave is basically my module for my Drum Cat now. So that's what I'm going to be using, or I have made videos already of me playing the Smart Wave, which is, if you're not familiar with that, John, it's like this little box. Smart Wave 2, just search on my channel, Smart Wave 2, and it's like this little DIY box you can get that you can use as a drum module. It's really cool, and it's tiny, and I just Velcro it to the bottom of my Drum Cat, and it's great. It's like the whole thing is like super compact, and it sounds way better, and feels better, and I can hook up real triggers to the bass drum pedal and the hi-hat than the Pile. So I'm probably going to sell the Pile because I really don't need it now, if the repaired DK10 has the sensitivity I like. That's the only reason why I hadn't gotten rid of the Pile yet already, is because I was still a little, the DK10 there was just that one pad that had weird sensitivity issues, but I think it was my fault, like I said. So I made it through the entire list. 27 drum sets from 1976. Thank God it's not that long. 1986, still a long goddamn time, until 2021, but the last one I bought was in 2020. Now, of course, I could be counting modules in there, but that would make it even a longer list, because in the last year, I've gone through like a ton of different modules. But yeah. Now, back on the VST thing, I haven't tried Superior Drummer, and I know a lot of people swear by that one to be the best. And, I'm not against the idea of using VSTs, but if I have a nice Roland module, that's what I'm going to use. And John Deff asked if I've played the digital snare ride yet. No, I haven't. I would love to, but they're just so expensive. And I already had to sell like almost everything I owned to buy that TD27. I sold 2 guitars, a bass, my TD8, and what else? I sold a lot of stuff just to get the TD27, because I found it. Sweetwater had a demo of the TD27 for really cheap. It was like $1,100, I think, something like that. Or it was like 10. It was $1,100 with tax and everything. And I like to think that it was the one that Nick DiVirgilio played in the demo. It probably was, because it's a demo mode, or a demo model, and Nick does all their demos, and I've seen his TD27 demo, so I'm most likely playing the same one that he used in that demo. I like to think that. I don't know that for a fact, but it's a good possibility because I got it from Sweetwater. They only had one, and it was the demo model. So, and there it is over there. All right, guys. That is going to be... Oh, John Deff, I have TD10 expansion. Is that what you mean? With the T1, what is it? TD1W, TDW1, something like that, expansion pack in it. You know, I've wanted a TD10, actually. I like those older Roland modules. I really liked my TD8, but I had to sell that, like I said. I got a good price for the TD8, so that definitely helped make up some of the cost of the TD27. I think I'd made back all my money from that. I mean, I had to sell some stuff I really liked. I sold my Mustang, my that I customized here on the channel. I sold my RX-10 guitar that I customized here on the channel. I sold my pink precision bass copy that I've had for like 15 years, which was also really good. Yeah, the cool thing about those TD10s is they have multiple outputs. Like the TD8 had that too, so you can really dial in sounds if you're recording. John Deff, I got a great deal on my TD10 750. Nice. Yeah, it's cool too, like how much Roland stuff holds its value. You know, it's like, you know, you can, even that TD8, you know, the one I had was from 1999. I still got $300 out of it, you know, which is good. I sold it with all my custom patches as well as a cable snake and mounting hardware and all that stuff too. But still, you know, it was good. They hold their value, so they're definitely worth, you know, that's the one thing. If you want to get a Roland module, it's like buying well, it's even better than buying an Apple computer. They really value better than Apples do, which is, you know, Apple computers hold their value really well, but Roland modules really hold their value well, like really well. So anyway, this has been a really long stream. I think this one's a record, one of the longest. How long has it been? Oh, not really. Okay, it wasn't as long as I thought. Almost 2 hours. I've gone over 2 hours before. But anyway, thanks everybody for watching. That was the list of every drum set that I've owned since 1986. Now, there might be some that I forgot, and there probably are, but I think that's all of them. And I really tried to think about it. And looking at it, let's see, what's the longest one I had? I think the TKO percussion. Well, that and the Imperial Star. I had the Imperial Star from 2015 to 2020, so I had that one for 5 years. TKO I had from, I think that one's longer. Let's see, I wrote down 2009, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Yeah, so 6 years. It won by 1 year. So the TK, that's pretty funny, you know, that like the set that I played the longest was this piece of crap that I bought from a dude in a storage unit, a TKO percussion. And I've had all these other like Ludwigs and Slingerlands and all this stuff, Tamas, but nope, TKO percussion. One thing I forgot to mention, that the edges on that thing, though, I did have recut by Bill Dedamore. I think that's how you say his name. The guy who makes pork pie percussion drums. I literally sent him the drums and had him cut the bearing edges on it and send them back to me. And so that was another reason why that kit sounded as good as it did, because it was customized, partially customized by Bill Dedamore of Pork Pie Percussion. So I don't know if he still does that. You used to be able to do that. Like you could just go to his website and you could just send him drums and he would cut them for you and send them back. It wasn't cheap, but it was worth it. So anyway, guys, thanks for watching. And don't forget to subscribe and click the bell icon if you haven't already. And I'll be back. I've got some this was an unscheduled live stream, but there's one coming up next Wednesday with my pal Benjamin Weiss, who I met on Instagram, actually. He's a young drummer here in New York City. And I uploaded a 360 video of him playing in the subway, which unfortunately one of the other band members weren't comfortable with it being on YouTube, I guess, for some reason. So anyway, I had to take that down, but it was up there. You might have caught it. But he's coming on the stream next Wednesday to talk about playing music and gigging during pandemic era New York City. And he's a young, 16 years old, plays like a ton of gigs in New York, which is really cool. And then next month, in March, I have another young drummer, multi-instrumentalist, Ian BW, who I also met on Instagram. Well, actually, no, I met him through YouTube because he started following my Nitro videos, and then that's originally how we had met. But he's 14, I think, and is just releasing an album where he's playing every single instrument on the album at 14 years old, recorded, produced, and releasing a full record by himself. And I just thought that was really, really impressive, to be 14 and doing that kind of work. I was like, that is really cool, like come on my channel and promote your album. So we're going to be doing that next March when his album comes out. But next Wednesday is going to be Benjamin Weiss, and he'll be on here talking about drumming and all the stuff that he's up to too. So I'm looking forward to that. That one's already scheduled. You can find it on the up and coming events. And so that's pretty much all. So tonight's pizza night, so I'm going to go make a pizza and probably watch the new episode of WandaVision, which is my favorite show at the moment. So thanks for watching, everybody. I'll see you guys really soon. And that's all. Bye.